All right, welcome to the deep dive. We are diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, yeah.
I know this is one that's been on your list, and clearly it's got you thinking about financial independence.
Yeah.
It's one of those books that's really made waves, sold millions of copies, stayed on the bestseller list for years.
Right.
So today we're gonna explore those core ideas. We'll
Yeah.
look at why it's been so popular and even some of the controversies surrounding it.
For sure.
One of the things that makes Rich Dad, Poor Dad so interesting is that it really challenges like conventional thinking about money.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, right off the bat, Kiyosaki throws you into this world with these contrasting philosophies,
Yeah.
which are embodied by the figures of, his own father, the poor dad, and his friend's father, the rich dad.
One of the things that really makes this book stand out, I think, is that, it's that contrasting philosophy and how he uses those two figures to delineate the ideas.
Yeah. It's a really intriguing way to frame it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two dads, two very different approaches to money. Can you tell us more about how those philosophies differ?
Absolutely. So the poor dad represents, he represents that traditional path that we're all told to follow. Get a good education, find a secure job, work hard, save money, live within your means, right?
Right.
But what Kiyosaki points out is that despite doing all the right things, his father always struggled financially.
Yeah.
And then you have Rich Dad, who emphasizes financial education, entrepreneurship, and building assets that generate passive income.
Mm-hmm.
Basically making money work for you, not the other way around.
Yeah, that's a huge point, right? It's not just about earning a paycheck, but understanding how money works and then building wealth through all sorts of different avenues.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where Kiyosaki's argument about financial education comes in.
Yeah.
Because he's basically saying that traditional schools fail to equip us with the tools we need to really thrive financially.
Yeah. He argues that that we need to go beyond just the basics like budgeting and saving to really understand like how financial systems work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that means learning about financial statements, things like balance sheets, which show a company's assets and liabilities, and income statements, which detail their profitability.
Right.
And he stresses the importance of tax strategies, different investment vehicles.
Yeah.
This knowledge, he argues, empowers you to make better decisions, more informed decisions about your money.
Right. And it makes a lot of sense, right? It's like true financial literacy is about mastering that bigger picture of money. It's not just managing your day-to-day expenses.
Yeah.
So this kind of leads us to one of the most famous lessons from the book.
Absolutely.
Which is the distinction between assets and liabilities.
Yeah.
And this idea has just been quoted everywhere.
Yeah. And it's such a simple concept, but it's so powerful because it challenges how we typically view things.
Yeah.
Most people see their house as an asset, right?
Yeah.
But Kiyosaki argues that unless your house is generating income for you, like through renting it out, it's actually a liability because it's constantly taking money out of your pocket through mortgage payments, property taxes, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at it.
Right.
Shifting your perspective from what something costs you to what it could potentially earn you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you've been on this journey toward financial independence. I mean, do you think about your own life? Are there things you own that could be considered assets, even in kind of a non-traditional sense?
Yeah, I think it's all about changing your mindset to see the world through that rich dad lens, right? Like identifying those opportunities to create income and build wealth.
Yeah, and the book goes on to explore all sorts of different avenues for doing that.
Absolutely.
And there's a big emphasis, right, on entrepreneurship and investing.
Yeah.
As opposed to just relying on a traditional 9-to-5 job.
Right. It encourages readers to think beyond just earning a paycheck.
Yeah.
And it introduces concepts like real estate investing, navigating the stock market, even starting your own business.
Right.
These, according to Kiyosaki, are paths to creating lasting wealth and, ultimately achieving financial freedom.
And that's where his framework, the cash flow quadrant, comes in, right?
Exactly.
Can you break that down for us?
Yeah. So the cash flow quadrant is Kiyosaki's way of categorizing how people earn income.
Okay.
And it's divided into 4 categories: employees, self-employed, business owners, and investors.
Okay.
So employees trade their time for a paycheck, right? Working for someone else.
Right.
Self-employed are their own bosses, but they're still trading time for money.
Okay, yeah.
Business owners have created systems and structures that generate income, even if they're not actively working in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And then investors, they make their money work for them through investments.
So to move towards financial independence, he's saying you need to shift from being, solely an employee or even self-employed,
Right.
to building businesses or investing in assets that generate income.
Yeah.
Even while you sleep, essentially.
Exactly. Kiyosaki argues that true financial independence comes from moving from the left side of the quadrant, which is the employees and the self-employed,
Okay.
to the right side, which is the business owners and investors.
Got it.
This is where you break free from trading time for money.
It's a really thought-provoking framework,
Yeah.
It really encourages you to think differently about your income sources.
Yeah.
And then how you can build a more sustainable and fulfilling financial future.
Absolutely.
But it also requires, seems like a pretty big shift in mindset, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Kiyosaki talks a lot about overcoming like fear and doubt, develop what he calls like a more abundant mindset.
Yeah, he emphasizes that achieving financial success requires more than just learning these technical skills.
Right.
You have to overcome those limiting beliefs about money. You got to be willing to take risks.
Yeah.
Even embrace failure as a learning experience.
Yeah.
And that internal shift is just as crucial as mastering those external strategies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just knowing the rules of the game, but believing you can win.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that makes Rich Dad, Poor Dad so compelling, right? It's not just a financial guide. It's like a motivational book.
Exactly.
It encourages you to think bigger and challenge the status quo when it comes to money.
One of its strengths is its accessibility. He uses storytelling, personal anecdotes to make these concepts easy to understand, even for someone with like no prior knowledge of finance.
Yeah, it's engaging, it's inspiring, and it can really like light a fire under people who are ready to take control, right?
Absolutely.
Because, it offers a lot of inspiring ideas.
Yeah.
But it's also sparked some debate.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's been quite a bit of criticism surrounding the rich dad character himself.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, this is a major point of contention. Kiyosaki has been vague about whether the rich dad was a real person or a composite character. And this lack of clarity has fueled some skepticism about the book's authenticity.
And then some critics also argue that, the book lacks concrete, actionable advice.
Yeah.
It's more about general principles.
Yeah.
Not so much about, like, the step-by-step strategies.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know critics like John T. Reed have been very vocal.
Yeah.
Arguing that the book oversimplifies financial strategies and can create, like, unrealistic expectations, especially for folks starting out with, limited capital.
Yeah.
So, it's important to approach the book with a discerning eye and do your own research.
For sure.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad can be like a really powerful catalyst for shifting your mindset, opening your eyes to new possibilities.
Yeah.
But it's not like a foolproof blueprint for riches.
Right. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yeah, okay, so we've got these like core ideas here, right?
Yeah.
We've got the contrasting philosophies of the two dads. We've got the assets versus liabilities lesson.
Right.
We've got the cash flow quadrant.
Yeah.
And just a whole lot of inspiration to think differently about money.
Yeah, a lot of inspiration.
All wrapped up in, a very engaging and accessible package. But we've also touched upon some of those controversies and criticisms.
Yeah, and those are worth exploring further.
Okay.
They raise important questions about like the feasibility of applying these rich dad principles in the real world, and whether it's truly accessible to everyone.
That's a perfect segue into part 2 of our deep dive. But we'll be back to explore the book's lasting influence.
Okay.
Kiyosaki's empire.
Yeah.
And delve even deeper into those criticisms. Stay with us.
All right.
Okay, we're back and we're ready to really like dig deeper into the legacy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
It's a book that's clearly sparked so much conversation, even controversy.
For sure.
But it's undeniable that it's had this major impact, right?
Oh, yeah.
On how people think about money and financial freedom.
I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad didn't just offer advice.
Mm-hmm.
It like created a cultural shift almost.
Yeah.
It gave people permission to question that traditional path.
Yeah.
You know, like going to school, getting a good job, working hard,
right,
and hoping for the best when it came to your finances.
Right. Right. It's like it opened up this whole new world of possibilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Encouraging people to actually take control of their financial future.
Yeah.
And really like create their own definition of success.
Exactly. And it did that in a way that was accessible and engaging, like using storytelling and simple language to break down these complex financial concepts.
Yeah.
That's part of why I think it resonated with so many people.
It definitely tapped into this desire, right, for financial literacy
Mm-hmm.
and empowerment.
For sure.
I mean, suddenly everyone was talking about assets and liabilities and passive income. It was like Kiyosaki had created his own financial language almost.
Yeah, he definitely popularized those concepts.
Yeah.
And shifted the conversation around money.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to the growth of this whole Rich Dad franchise, right?
Right.
Like you had sequels to the book.
Yeah.
You had workshops, board games, online courses.
I mean, it's interesting, right? How one single book
Yeah.
could spawn such a vast, enterprise.
Yeah.
But I imagine that level of success,
Yeah.
right, also attracts scrutiny, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with people's finances.
Absolutely. Kiyosaki's success and his his outspoken views
Yeah.
have definitely drawn criticism over the years.
Yeah.
Some people questioned the effectiveness of his strategies taught in his programs,
Yeah.
claiming they're too simplistic or even risky.
So it's like anything, right? I mean, you have to approach it
Yeah.
with a critical eye.
Definitely.
Like, do your own research, right?
Absolutely.
Before making any, financial decisions.
Yeah.
Based solely on what you read in a book or even, here in a workshop.
You have to develop your own financial literacy.
Yeah.
And seek advice from, qualified professionals.
Right.
When it's needed.
I mean, we touched upon some of the criticisms of the book itself earlier.
Right.
Like, the lack of concrete advice, that potential for oversimplification. Did those criticisms extend to his other ventures?
Yeah, I think some of those criticisms were consistent across the board.
Okay.
For example, some people felt like the programs were overpriced.
Right.
And focused more on like selling that Rich Dad brand.
Right.
Than providing like substantial value.
Right. Right.
And others questioned the legitimacy of his real estate deals and investment strategies.
Okay.
Suggesting that they weren't as foolproof as they were presented.
So it sounds like there were concerns about whether these programs,
Yeah.
really lived up to the hype.
Right.
And whether they were truly beneficial, right?
Yeah.
For the average person.
Yeah.
Seeking financial independence.
Right. And there were concerns also about, the emphasis on certain types of investments.
Yeah.
Like real estate.
Right.
Which can be risky.
Yeah.
And require significant capital.
So I mean, while Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And the programs, might be inspiring, thought-provoking. It's important to remember they represent one perspective, right? One approach to finance. And, like with any financial advice, you have to evaluate it critically.
Absolutely.
Determine if it aligns with, your own circumstances, your goals, your values.
It's about finding what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Developing that financial knowledge.
Yeah.
Making informed decisions.
Speaking of unique situations, I'm curious to get your perspective on this.
Okay.
The book places a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship.
Right.
And real estate investing.
Yeah.
As paths to financial freedom.
Yeah.
Do you think those paths are realistic for everyone?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those key areas where the book's message might not resonate with everyone.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship involves, taking risks.
Yeah.
And stepping outside your comfort zone.
Right.
And it requires, resilience.
Yeah.
Adaptability, even a tolerance for uncertainty and setbacks.
It's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not.
It takes a certain type of person, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To thrive in that type of environment.
Yeah.
Where there's like no guaranteed paycheck, right? No clear path to success.
And even with real estate, while it can be lucrative,
right,
it's not without its challenges and risks.
Yeah.
It requires knowledge, understanding property management, access to capital.
So while the book might present these paths as, relatively straightforward, the reality is that they can be complex and demanding.
Absolutely.
Right? You need a specific skill set, a mindset, even financial resources, right? To navigate them successfully.
And it's important to acknowledge that not everyone has equal access to those resources.
Right. It's a reminder that while Rich Dad Poor Dad offers like a compelling framework for thinking about money and building financial independence, it's not like a magic bullet.
No.
And its message might need to be like adapted or contextualized.
Yeah.
Right. Based on individual circumstances and the realities of, systemic inequalities that can impact financial opportunity.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
The book's message can be very empowering, but you got to apply it critically and realistically and recognizing that everyone's starting point journey is going to be different.
So while Rich Dad Poor Dad might not be like the definitive guide for everyone, it's undeniable that it's had this profound impact.
Oh, yeah.
Right, on how we think about money.
Yeah. It challenged that conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
It sparked so many conversations about financial literacy, inspired millions to take control.
And it's a book that continued to be relevant even decades after its publication.
Yeah.
And in a world where, economic uncertainty, financial inequality are these growing concerns.
Right.
People are still looking for answers, right? They're looking for strategies to achieve financial security.
And that's why we're taking this deep dive to explore these ideas, understand their nuances, and ultimately empower ourselves to make those informed decisions about our own financial journeys.
It's about equipping ourselves with knowledge, right? Challenging those assumptions, and really finding what works best for us, even if that means deviating from like the Rich Dad script.
And speaking of deviating, there are other perspectives on wealth creation that we haven't even touched on yet.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Perspectives that offer like alternative approaches to those presented in Rich Dad Poor Dad.
And those alternative perspectives can provide, valuable insights, right?
Absolutely.
And it really broaden our understanding of what it truly means to achieve that financial well-being.
Yeah, they might challenge some of Kiyosaki's core principles and offer different strategies for navigating, this complex world of money.
And exploring those alternative perspectives is exactly what we're going to be doing in the final part of our deep dive. So stay with us as we continue this journey.
All right.
Into the world of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and beyond. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And, we've covered a lot of ground, right? The book's core ideas, its impact, the criticisms.
Right.
We even touched on, some of the limitations of applying those ideas in the real world. But now I'm kind of curious to explore, some alternative perspectives on wealth creation.
Okay.
Financial independence.
Yeah.
Are there other schools of thought out there? That might offer like a different approach? Or challenge some of Kiyosaki's core principles?
Absolutely. I mean, while Rich Dad Poor Dad has been incredibly influential, it's not the only voice in the world of personal finance.
Right.
There are many other experts and philosophies out there that offer valuable insights and strategies.
And I think that's an important point to emphasize, right? It's easy to get kind of caught up in the excitement of a particular book or philosophy.
Right.
But it's important to remember there's no one size fits all approach.
Yeah. There are many different ways to achieve financial well-being.
And sometimes, exploring those alternative perspectives can actually deepen our understanding of the original material.
For sure.
It allows us to kind of see things from different angles, question assumptions, and ultimately make better decisions.
Absolutely.
So where do we start?
Yeah.
Right? What are some of these alternative perspectives that might offer, like a different lens through which to view, wealth creation and financial independence?
Well, one area where we see a different approach is in this idea of financial stability versus like rapid wealth accumulation.
Okay, yeah.
So while Rich Dad Poor Dad emphasizes, building assets, generating passive income quickly, other philosophies prioritize like creating the strong foundation through things like debt reduction, building an emergency fund, and invest it conservatively for the long term.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like building a house, right? I mean, you need a solid foundation before you start adding on like rooms,
right,
and fancy features.
Exactly. And for some people, that sense of stability and security is a crucial component of their well-being.
Yeah, I imagine that approach might resonate.
Yeah.
Particularly with people who are like more risk averse, or have maybe experienced, financial instability in the past.
Absolutely. And it's not about saying one approach is better than the other.
Right.
It's about recognizing that there are different paths.
Yeah.
And the right path for you depends on your individual circumstances.
That brings us back to that importance of self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
And aligning those financial strategies with your personal vision of success.
Right. And it's also about recognizing that financial well-being is more than just like accumulating wealth.
Okay.
It's about creating a life that feels secure, and balanced, and fulfilling.
That's a really holistic way.
Yeah.
To think about it. It's not just about like the numbers in your bank account.
Right.
It's about how those numbers translate into a sense of freedom, security, and ultimately like happiness.
Exactly. And sometimes that means, prioritizing things like time freedom over maximizing income, or focusing on experiences and relationships over material possessions.
Yeah. So it's really about defining what that financial success means to you. And then finding the strategies and the philosophies that align with that vision.
Exactly.
So thinking about, your own journey, what resonated most with you from Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
What really struck me was the power of mindset.
Yeah.
And recognizing that you can build wealth beyond just a traditional job.
Yeah, I think for me it was similar. It was that idea of shifting your mindset around money. Recognizing that potential, right?
Yeah.
For building wealth beyond, just a 9-to-5.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the concepts of assets and liabilities, the cash flow quadrant, they really got me thinking differently about my finances.
Yeah.
And where I want to kind of focus my energy moving forward.
Right.
But I also appreciate the points you've made about, financial stability.
Yeah.
Finding that approach that aligns with my values and my risk tolerance. It's a good reminder that there's no like one right way to do things.
It's your journey. You get to decide.
And it's okay to kind of forge your own path.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm definitely going to spend some time researching those, alternative perspectives that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Especially like the ones that prioritize building that strong financial foundation, aligning those strategies with my values.
Sounds like you're already on the path, to creating a more empowered and intentional relationship with money.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's definitely been an eye-opening journey.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your insights.
Of course.
And your guidance,
Well, I think we've covered a lot around today, right? From the core ideas of Rich Dad, Poor Dad to its lasting impact.
Yeah.
Even those alternative perspectives that challenge or expand on its message.
Yeah, it's been a deep dive.
It has.
In the truest sense of the word.
For sure.
And while Rich Dad, Poor Dad might not be that definitive guide for everyone.
Right.
It definitely sparks those important conversations.
Right.
It challenges us to think differently about money, our potential, to create a more abundant life.
And ultimately, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Empowering ourselves with knowledge, exploring possibilities, and finding that path that leads to our own version of financial well-being.
That's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
It's been a pleasure.
And to you, our listener, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep pushing towards those financial goals, whatever they may be. Until next time, keep diving deep.